Good evening, viewers. I'm Shivani, and welcome to NIJ Lifestyle. As you know, this week we are celebrating International Day of Yoga. A part of United Nations resolution for the International Day of Yoga reads that the UN General Assembly, recognizing that yoga provides a holistic approach to health and well-being, recognizing also that wider dissemination of information about the benefits of practicing yoga would be beneficial for the health of the world population, decided to proclaim 21st June the International Day of Yoga. This resolution came less than 3 months after Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while addressing the UNGA on September 27, 2014, had said that yoga is an invaluable gift of our ancient tradition and proposed the adoption of the International Day of Yoga. Over the years, the International Day of Yoga has been celebrated along themes that are in tune with global challenges and problems. This year, therefore, the theme for the International Day of Yoga is Yoga for Well-being. So I welcome you all to this session with a yoga expert who can enlighten us on the benefits of yoga for well-being. Let me introduce my guest today is Yogacharya Shalu Dogra, who's based in Gurgaon and has a vast experience in wellness coaching, yoga, and meditation. She's a published author with her first book on meditation called Everywhere. She has also been awarded as an Exceptional Woman of Excellence at the International Women's Economic Forum. You can follow her on Instagram or Facebook at Shalu Dogra Wellness. So I welcome you, Shalu, to our show.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's so good to have you, and I have personally benefited a lot from your brand of yoga. Although I wouldn't say that I'm the best of the students, but that is why the intention is to continue the progress. So once again, I ask you, why yoga?
So yoga is one philosophy of our country amongst other philosophies, which takes the mind and body along with this journey back inwards to the self. So I feel when we can take care of this form that we are in, it's very inviting for an individual, because we all are looking for, you can say maybe, I don't want to speak on behalf of others, but for myself, I was always spiritually inclined, and I stumbled upon meditation in 1993, and it was like a hand in glove for me, and from strength training to interval training to, I don't know when the transition happened to asana practice, because I realized that there is an ease, that is available at all times. It's possible to be in that ease and happiness and the flow of things. And yoga has been able to provide that personally for me. And it has, quenched my thirst of the spiritual element altogether.
Okay. So I feel that yoga is part of our heritage. Still, many Indians don't know enough about yoga. I feel, we've heard terms like mudras, asanas, dhyan, yam. I mean, where do they all fit in? If you could give us a brief introduction into different aspects of yoga and what they mean.
So, on the outside, yoga is like the merging of the finite with the infinite. So, as a layman would put it, the individual consciousness merging with the supreme consciousness. And in the Gita, it clearly talks about how a person of action. So, according to your inherent nature, you can choose your type of yoga. If you're an intellectual, then maybe dhyan or gyan yoga. A person who's action oriented, karma yoga. A person who's emotional or hearty can look into bhakti yoga. So, there are various types of ways of means of this merging, this union between the individual and the supreme. Then there is when we look at the history of yoga, there was a sage Patanjali who came to talk about the path of yoga through 8 stages.
Okay.
So, and the first five are the external, how we conduct ourselves, like the yam or the niyam, which is, say, the social conduct, the personal conduct. Then we come to asan practice, then pranayam practice, and then that leads the way to pratyahar, which is withdrawal of the senses, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. And so these form the 8 stages. And so the purpose of yoga being samadhi, where there's kaivalya, there's moksha, and there's liberation of, and just the happiness of being in the Atman, which is also Paramatman. So that's how the 8 stages are. For mudras and all, mudras are like, you can say, gestures or like a poise for psychic energy. And in yoga, mudras and bandhas are interlinked. Bandhas are like locks, they are also considered gestures. Unlike the dance mudras, which are hasta mudras, so yoga has a different. So Hat Yoga Pradipika will state all the mudras and the bandhas if anybody is interested in going deeper into that.
So we can pick and choose one, or we should continue on all these, by sequence.
So, like I said, it leads from the external to the internal world, knowing that the universe is within all of us.
Okay.
Rather than us being a separate entity in this universe, which is a very egoistic or a more superficial way of living. Yeah. And you can usually it will go stage by stage, just like in school you have class 1, 2, 3, 4, but at the same time this is Kali Yuga and new age consciousness is very high, so you can absolutely take the good elements out of all as an introduction, and then once you get serious, then one will naturally progress to the other. That's how, for me, it was ulta. I started with
I wanted to know your journey also. How are you?
So for me, it was more, I would say, more samadhi. So, we don't choose how we are born, what kind of sukshma sharir we carry with us.
You started with the last one?
I started with the meditation and for me, it was easy to be in the lay of the dhyan, element of yoga, and it was easy. Almost like when I read the Advaita philosophy, it was almost like I have written it. I could have epiphanies during meditation, and so for me, it was a joy and a pleasure to read our scriptures and to go through the whole gamut of our, Shiva Sutras and the Hat Yoga Pradipika, Ghera and Samhita, Yoga Vishisht, and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So I would say, Asan came much later, almost when both my children were born, actually. So Asan practice, and I still maintain that it's not just Asan or the physical aspect, like right now, yoga is propagated to be more asana oriented, more physical oriented, but that's not the case. If you have dhyan and if you have therav, if you have the understanding of Gyan Yoga, then you are a yogi.
Great. Now, is yoga superior to other forms of exercise or meditation for mental peace? Because, right now everybody's talking about mental health. Do you think it is superior to other forms of exercise?
So when we have an evolution in consciousness, I wouldn't call anything inferior or superior. There is a value to every kind of exercise, and if we can have a concentrated form of whatever we are doing, whether you're lifting iron, you're lifting weights or you're doing cardio, if you can have mindfulness in your practice, then it's not very far from yoga.
Okay.
And yoga is an amalgamation of a mind and a body, and the ending of non-duality. Mm-hmm. Yet within itself, when we practice asana, so there would be maybe it will reflect as a change in a person's mentality also, because there will be stillness and silence orientation, a more intuitive way and a more authentic way of living. See, in the Gita, it says that Sankhya is a theory element and yoga is a practical element. So, yoga can be a very good guide to have the union with our source.
Okay.
The sourceless source. So I won't call it superior though. That will be very arrogant. But yoga.
This whole trend of doing 108 Surya Namaskar. Once you told me that even if you do one with complete
Dhyan. Absolutely. Dhyan is an important element. Ahimsa is an important element. It's one of the yam where, non-violence, where you're not depending on one part of your body than the other. All parts are important. It's the science of the absolute. So when we do 108 Surya Namaskars, we may lose our mindfulness because we are more interested in finishing the 108, and we are not really in that asana. So when you're doing one Surya Namaskar and there are 12 asanas in that, you do one, but don't think of the previous one or the next one. Do that one properly, and you will do it to the best of your potential, and you will be intuitive, and there will be a santosh factor. See, mindfulness leads to the contentment aspect of life, which is very important. It builds up patience and it builds up santosh. Huge element for happiness.
Contentment.
Santosh. Yeah.
Now, as is a youth-oriented channel, how can youth benefit from yoga?
So I have addressed an assembly of youth for at my workshops and lectures at certain times, and I find them to be very aware. I find the new generation to be more aware than what we were at their age. So I have learned so much from them. And I think yoga, if they are going to prioritize peace in their lives, they will be attracted to yoga. As it is, we have so much of physical, elements shown of yoga, the yoga asana, that it's very, tempting for a person to, rather than sweating and groaning and moaning in their exercises, to be able to hold an asana with ease and yet do amazing poses at the same time, which requires strength, which requires stamina, which require endurance, balance, as well as flexibility.
Okay. Now, is diet also important with yoga? And is there a yogic diet?
Yeah, so diet is mentioned in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, but the Gherand will have certain different foods. Mostly, I would say something which is not sour or pungent or non-juicy, basically more fresh, more pranic value. And a good clue is given when in the yoga text is clearly written that try to eat half of what you're eating, 1/4 for leave it for the air that will happen within the body for assimilation, absorption, and I think 1/4 for water. So to about half to 3/4 of what you feel like eating, you should take that. And my personal advice regarding food would be, to have, which is also taken from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, is to have easily digestible foods, nothing that will make you feel heavy or lethargic, to feel light and nourished after you finish eating.
I remember this principle of leaving some space, empty stomach.
Yeah.
Our grandmothers used to tell us, but then, I think our generation went exactly in the opposite side with all these lovely food restaurants and all that. I think we're going back.
It's all about the more mentality where, there's the palate gets overloaded with salt and sugar. Mm-hmm. And once it gets, that's why the yogi is supposed to take more bland food, no added sugars or salts, because when you do that, then you want more and more. It's like you get used to a particular dose of medicine and then your body gets used to it and then you want more higher doses.
Taste is just like what we call moh maya. Is that so?
Taste is a part of the senses. We have the karmendriya, gyanendriya, and uske upar is the mind. And the whole science of yoga starts with the sense perceptions and how we can turn the sense perceptions inward. Yeah. And then, get into the mind and the concentration and the dhyan element of being.
Excellent.